Thank you for that long introduction. As she said, I'm Graham Jenson, and I work at Coinbase, building tools for developers to help them securely deploy their code. Now, as some of you might know, Coinbase is a digital asset company. That means that we trade and buy and sell currencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin. And we handle billions of dollars. So handling that kind of volume of money makes us a very security-conscious organization. This slide is already out of date. Bitcoin's now $7,000, and I took this screenshot yesterday. So you can see the amount of trading that we're actually doing. So to illustrate why we're a security-focused company, I'm going to start off with a bit of a horror story that keeps me up at night. And this is based on true events. So there was this digital asset company called Shapeshift, and they hired an engineer called Bob. Now, he looked good on paper, and he had good resume and good references. So Bob worked at the company for a few months, becoming more knowledgeable and trusted with their systems and gaining access. Then one day, the company notices that their hot wallet, which is basically the cash register, was missing about $1 million in Bitcoin. Now, the CEO immediately called all of the engineers to come into the office and to begin an investigation. Now, Bob, he shows up late, he's acting suspiciously, makes a really bad excuse, and then leaves, and is never seen again. So evidence quickly mounts that it's Bob that caused the robbery. So to immediately protect themselves, the company changed all of their sensitive passwords, redeployed all of their applications onto new servers, and then once they felt safe, they brought the site back up online and continued business as usual. Now, within a month of that happening, the hot wallet was robbed twice again in 2 weeks. Now, each robbery caused them to do the same thing again, completely shut down the website, roll all of their sensitive passwords, and rebuild their entire infrastructure. But fortunately, digital currencies work on an open ledger, so they were able to track where the currency went. And since no one likes a thief, the CEO of Shapeshift called up where this currency went and was able to lock it down. And this also led to finding out who the culprit was. And he was a hacker named Rovian. So the CEO emails Rovian. This is actually true. It's crazy. Nice job on the hack. How did you do it? And Rovian responds with one word: Bob. And since the stolen goods couldn't be cashed out by Rovian, for a fee, he agreed to tell the CEO how he hacked them. So it was Bob. He bought from Bob SSH keys to servers, all of their source code for all of their applications, and most disturbingly, access to a remote desktop of one of his former colleagues. Now, this way, Rovian just sat back and watched Shapeshift rebuild their infrastructure, re-roll their passwords, and then was able to compromise them again and again. So after burning all of the laptops, rolling over all of their passwords, rebuilding their infrastructure again, Shapeshift was able to come back online. Now, the full story of that is way better than what I just told you, and it's available online thanks to Shapeshift making this public. So what can we learn from this example? What I want you to do right now is imagine that your work laptop has been completely compromised. Someone has been watching you and recording every keystroke for a month. They have access to your 1Password, all of your SSH keys, so to all of the servers and databases. They have access to all of your cloud accounts. And yeah. So what kind of risk to your company would that kind of exposure pose? How many servers could they access? How much private information of your customers or your employees could they access? Could they extract money somehow? Could they pretend to be you over Slack or Facebook and get something like destructive done via that way? Could they deploy malicious code to production? Could your company survive? So this is the data breach investigation report released by Verizon, the 2017 version. And of the nearly 2,000 breaches that were looked at, 25% involved internal actors. Now that might be pretty difficult to secure it against, but 81% of them just involved exploiting either stolen or weak passwords. So the good news is that although attackers use new tricks, they mostly rely on some common patterns that can be protected against. So here's the recommendations from that report. Be vigilant, log everything, especially changes to systems, and alert on signs of a breach. Make people your first defense. Train staff to understand the signs of being breached, and then speak up if they see something. Use principle of least privilege. Only give privileges to people and systems that are required for them to do their jobs. In most companies, the person that's just been there the longest has acquired all of the access. If this sounds like you, maybe start giving up some of the access. Yeah, as you are basically a single point of failure. Patch promptly. Equifax was recently hacked, and 143 million social security numbers were taken from them because of a two-month-old known bug in Apache struts. So just keeping your systems and dependencies up to date can stop many different types of attacks. Encrypt sensitive data, so if it gets stolen, it's completely useless. Don't forget physical security. Stealing your laptop or accessing it while it's unlocked is a very easy way to lose all your, for someone to install a remote desktop. And use two-factor authentication or 2FA everywhere. And I think this is the easiest and most important, because basically what you're trying to do is force the attacker to steal something that's in your physical proximity. This being in New Zealand, this eliminates 99% of the hackers in all of the world. Being in Wellington, it's almost 100%. And this is basically the answer to the question above. What would happen if I was completely compromised is at least they haven't got my phone, so they can't log in anywhere. Great, so now we know what we're gonna do to be secure. We'll just do this stuff. But how do you integrate this into your workflow without causing friction? So what do I mean by friction? Well, as developers, you know you have to put effort to get your code into production. And friction is the opposing force to that effort. It slows us down, it wears us out, it makes us feel less productive, and while we're trying to do our jobs of just moving our code bases forward. As developers, the priorities that we have and the decisions that we make impact the friction that we feel. So let's say I want to develop a workflow that has the least amount of friction possible. I would just deploy my production application on my laptop, and whenever I needed to make a code change, I would just go in and change it live. It'd immediately be available to everyone. But we have other priorities in that. We want to work collaboratively on a code base. We want security. We want to make sure that we don't deploy breaking changes, and we want to make our application highly available and performant. So these decisions might these priorities might lead you to make decisions by adding some friction to your workflow, like using Git, maybe a CI server, locking down access to production via SSH, or deploying to the cloud. Some of these add a bit more friction than others, though. Like, we can all agree that using Git, as we just have seen, is a good idea because it allows us to work collaboratively, even though it adds a little bit of friction. But on the other hand, deploying to the cloud might become so complex that only a few people at your company can do it. So what ends up happening is they're now gatekeepers to production, and the amount of friction to get your code deployed is unbearable. This makes friction like a currency that you spend on the priorities during your workflow. If you spend too much, then people will become unhappy and productive. But the nice thing is that if you have an easy and simple workflow to begin with, then you can spend a little bit more on either being more secure or maybe deploying less errors. And you can also get some more friction to spend if you reduce rough areas in different places. So if you, say, adopt some DevOps principles and enable everyone to deploy their code to production, then that would remove the gatekeeper as a deployer, and then everyone would get some more available friction, less friction. So Coinbase has security as a top priority. This is our public stance. But we're also a fast-moving startup in a dynamic domain. So I want to share with you some of the tips and tricks and tools and whatnot that we have in place to reduce friction caused by adding additional security. But firstly, here are some numbers. So we've moved about $40 billion in digital assets. We are available in 32 countries, not New Zealand, I'm sorry. We've got nearly 12 million users. And on the engineering side of things, we have about 250 deployable projects with about 80 engineers. And on average, we deploy 70 times a day. But the metric I'm most proud of is that it is from pull request to production is under an hour. So if someone needed to get something to deploy to production, and on average this happens, we get our stuff out very fast. So that has very little friction. Now what this shows, or what I think it shows, is that although we have a high bar for security, we haven't halted development under that weight of billions of dollars moving through the platform. So how do we do this? Well, we focus on building self-service tools for developers. This means removing all the gatekeepers from a workflow and providing tools that are secure and fast. What we want is developers to be in charge of their own workflows, but guided towards being secure. And this led us to consensus. Now, these are the steps that what I mean by consensus. Anyone can propose a change to anything. Others approve that change, and the number of approvals depend on the sensitivity of the project. And then anyone can apply or deploy that change to production. Now this works because it removes insider threats like Bob or compromised laptops. Any change that he would have tried to make would have been reviewed by someone else and flagged. And we think that compromising multiple people is significantly harder than compromising one person. And given that we can adjust how many approvals per project, that means that someone might have to compromise a large part of the company before they get anything out. Now, we use this consensus model to secure code, environment variables, deployment configuration, all of our AWS infrastructure, operating systems, user management, and just everything we possibly can get behind it. It also provides us with a great story for compliance and audit and security reviews, because we get to know what change was proposed, or who proposed a change, what changed, and then who approved the change to go to production. So Heimdall is a bot that sees all. And here is an example of how we change code via pull requests. So first, what I would do is propose a change via a pull request. Someone else would then approve that pull request. And then Heimdall allows that pull request to be merged, and then anyone can deploy it. So here you can see Heimdall in action, protecting a pull request. This involves not letting anyone who created the pull request or committed to that pull request approve it. It also shows that the person approving it requires 2FA. Yeah, and the Apple Watch removes about 2 to 3 seconds on like pulling out your phone and doing the 2FA thing. So it's quite popular at Coinbase since everything is behind 2FA. And then once it's been merged, so once it's got enough reviews and Heimdall has let it to be merged, this is us deploying code. This is someone logging into a tool called CodeFlow and then clicking a button. And then you can see this is sped up, but it took about 4 minutes to deploy. Now, this kind of security is core to the workflow at Coinbase. It ensures that multiple people must collaborate together with 2FA before changes can be deployed. Now, I'm going to admit a bit of a lie here. The title of the talk is Security Without Friction. But if you add anything to a workflow, it's going to add a little bit of time and effort, which is friction. So we put a lot of effort into making deploys easy so that when we put something like 2FA reviews or forcing our developers to two-factor authenticate any approval, they aren't bothered by it because we've already gained the currency of the friction to spend. This way, we try and stay friction neutral to keep our developers happy and productive. So here's a solution that you can use if you don't want to go through all the work of building a Heimdall and a CodeFlow. Because Coinbase is a bit extreme with its views on security, but security might not be a top priority for your company. So what you could do is ensure that all of the people in your GitHub organization have 2FA enabled. You could force that every pull request must be reviewed and approved. And you could block direct pushes to the master branch. Now, when implementing any security features, you've got to ask yourself, how could it be worked around? Well, GitHub won't let you force asking for more than one approval. A new commit won't invalidate an approval. And GitHub admins can change all the settings, so this won't protect necessarily against Bob if he's a GitHub admin and working at your company. But it would stop an attack where someone has compromised your laptop, because to log in to GitHub and to give an approval would require 2FA. Now, a more cryptographic way to force consensus is through an algorithm called Shamir's secret sharing. This algorithm lets you break apart a secret into n shards and such that you need m shards to reconstruct the secret. Now, this is known as M of n. So up there, you can see that we have a 3 of 5. What we've done is broken up a secret into 5 pieces, given it to 5 different people, and we require that 3 of those people, any 3 of those people, have to come together to reconstruct the secret. Now, it doesn't matter if Bob's got one of these pieces, because he doesn't have all of the other pieces to compromise. So at Coinbase, we use this in a few different ways, but mostly for secrets that are too important for one person to know. For example, we might split up a root password into 2 of 7. So that way 2 people have to get together to log into an account. And we make sure that there's 7 people so that it's easy to find 2 people if someone is really needed to log in. And it's also the mechanism in which we secure our cold wallet. And that cold wallet stores billions of dollars in Bitcoin. So we trust this quite a lot. Now, if you wanted to start using this today, I'd recommend going and looking at HashiCorp Vault. And it seals and unseals its secrets using Shamir's shared secret. It's been reviewed and audited externally for its security concerns and is actually pretty easy to use. But if you wanted to start using this today, there's, with like an M of n-ish thing, what you could do is you could take your, say, GitHub login credentials, your GitHub admin login credentials, split up the password in 2FA, and give the password to 3 people, and then give the 2FA token to 3 other people. That's kind of like a 2 of 6. That means that 2 people, 1 person with the password and 1 person with 2FA token, have to get together to be able to log into the admin account. Now, if you have a process and you tell everyone that once you've logged in, you have to pair on every change that GitHub admin makes, you've just protected yourself against Bob, right? Because he has to be sitting there with someone else while making all the changes. So another thing that we focus on at Coinbase is continuous security. And some of you might know these projects. We've got Bundler Audit, which checks for dependent gems for vulnerabilities, for known vulnerabilities. Then we've got Brakeman, which is static analyzer and vulnerability scanner, specifically for Rails. And we've got Rubocop, which is a style checker, but does come with some security scans. Now, using these tools is a great way to decrease the surface area for your and notify you if you have any vulnerabilities. Now, you can run these tools in a test suite by writing a test like this. And by also adding these tests like this for Bundler Audit and Rubocop, and then using a CI server, basically every pull request that you submit becomes a security scan of your code. And your test will immediately fail and tell you if one of your dependent gems has just released a vulnerability. Now, if Equifax had a similar test like this, they would have known pretty much immediately that Apache Struts had a vulnerability and would have been able to work towards updating it. The problem with this method, though, it isn't really scaled to companies if you have hundreds of different projects in multiple languages. So hopefully soon we'll be open sourcing a tool we built internally called Celis, which is a centrally configured integration into your CI pipeline so that you can so that your security team can effectively scan all of your projects on every pull request. And the nice thing about that is it only adds a few seconds to every single test, so a very small amount of friction. Now, a central part of Coinbase is being secure is also the culture that we foster within the company. It's really difficult to secure a company that doesn't care about it. So to help with that, we created a fun service called Pwnboard. Pwnboard is a Slack bot that you can call on someone else's unlocked computer. Yeah. And then this registers that person got pwned and updates a scoreboard that everyone can look at to see. Now, after launching this, we had some plans to actually start restricting users that just didn't lock their laptop because we thought they would be unsecure. That never happened. The entire company took this way too seriously, and within days, no one left an unlocked laptop. I've seen people run across an entire room to get an unlocked laptop. So this kind of activity and cultural game highlighted and fixed a potential vector of attack. Now, Bob got that remote desktop onto his coworker's laptop somehow. And maybe it was through someone's unlocked laptop and then just putting in a USB stick or something. So this kind of protection really does actually, this kind of cultural activity really does add protection. And Pwnboard is only a few hundred lines. It's actually really fun to build as a first Slack bot, and is really valuable. And it's also a really cool introduction to the security culture at Coinbase. Because when you start and you don't know about this, you get pwned very fast. And you then start to immediately lock your laptop. So one of the things I love about Ruby and its community is the developer-centric mentality that coding should make you happy. I can be very happy writing Ruby, but if it takes a lot of effort to get my code into production, I become unhappy very quickly. So developer happiness doesn't end when we stop coding. We should try and extend Ruby's goal of being productive and happy to the rest of our workflow. Now, if you put security in place that makes your developers unhappy, either they're going to quit or they're going to find a way to work around it, which completely voids any protection that security gave you. But if you fear adding security because of the additional friction that it will add to your developers' workflows, then you're just leaving yourself open to extraordinary risk. Now, what I hopefully got across with this talk is that security is important, but your happiness is too. And that you should take friction into account when adding any security measure or any activity to your workflow so that you can be secure and happy. And one of my favorite quotes from Sandy Metz is, "When cycling, either there is a headwind or you're having a good day. I'm always ready to take a wind-assisted ride as my accomplishment, as if I'm really that strong." So part of our job is to reduce friction to make ourselves and others productive. And I also think part of my job is to appreciate those who make us stronger. So on that note, here's my team. They're awesome to work with. And that's the end of the talk. Any questions or anything? I'm at Graham Jenson on Twitter and GitHub. I blog at Maori Geek, and that's my email. Thank you.